Edwards, because they don't have water out there.
Yeah,
They don't have,
Well, they got well
they don't
water.
have town water, they
Right.
have well water. So I guess it is the same thing, maybe. I'm not sure how they do it, but
Because
the way
other
we're
than
doing
that,
it in
Or
town,
Morgan have public water, you know, he's just got well water, right?
right?
Yeah.
But ours is very simple. You got, it's water we're using, and it's going down the sewer. So we charge water and sewer on that meter that they use to wash down the boats with. Add it to your primary meter reading, and you both of those meters pay water and sewer. The meter that goes out on the dock gets a sewer credit. 4 to 4.
6 rock hall members. You got, right, rail line? And Osprey. Well, Osprey's gratitude. Right, well, Osprey and gratitude are one and the same.
You got
Lift pumps at one time.
down New Street.
Right, because they don't do any hauling on Lawton.
No, but they do down there.
Right, there's your.
And they're in the process of putting one of these things together.
Yeah. Well, I think I mean, if you're gonna continue in the business of hauling boats and spraying them, you're gonna either have to do it, or you're gonna, I guess, have to forego your general, discharge permits until you bring yourself up to whatever the standards are
And
for
see, in
your
the
discharge.
past, your power washing water went overboard, and that was running off of your second meter, and you got a sewer credit. You got a sewer credit for what water goes out on your pier, and you got a sewer credit for what went through the power washer at the ramp, or the lift. Because it went, now that's going through, at the lift, is going down the sewer, so you put a meter on that, and you get water and sewer on it.
Right.
Probably a very small, and it's probably not that much water used there.
Doug, I remember when that conversation came up, and if I'm not mistaken, Doug had calculated what he, on average, what amount of water went through per boat. And I think he said, based on the number of boats he does over the course of a season, it's on average, he said he estimated somewhere around 15,000 gallons. Does that seem right to you?
That's
I bet.
probably, I don't
Right.
think it's gonna be that, but it's not a big deal, but it's a fair way of doing it by putting.
Well, it's a big deal to the marinas, obviously, because if they don't put something in place to eliminate the discharge, they're out, they can't get their discharge permit. Although on the other hand, from the collection standpoint, or ensure that we're not allowing anything to get through the cracks, you know, that may be a little more.
So it costs, at that rate, it's $9.75 a thousand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said, they've been doing this for
But
years before all this started.
it's not a lot of income, but it's a fair way of measuring sewer.
Well, I think in this case, when we heard those marine owners talk, they were, you know,
They were worried about being put out of business.
well, I think they were on average, they were saying about $100,000, 75,000 to implement, transition their place to be in compliance. And I guess the method that they're looking at, if it went through the sewer, then it cuts back on all that cost, or a good majority of it.
I have a question.
Sorry, you said Marie?
Oh, good.
I don't understand all this, but are we opening a can of worms if the marinas, God bless them, have made out all these years without dumping the sewage into our sewage line? Is there a whole lot of reason to change things the way they've been, when we're just now spending for the sewer to be updated? Are we taking a chance of causing a problem that's gonna make our sewage system not be what we expect and what we want?
I think that's why we're having this conversation, is to determine, is that what we're looking to implement, is that going to be something that's just not cost effective, both for the town and the customers, and could it in turn utilize more capacity that we know today is a fairly, you know, the sewer capacity is a precious thing. So I think that's I guess a final, when we come to the conclusion of this, that's a lot of good points that we've got to really know. Is it really that worth it to do it.
Because we're gonna have more houses built, we're gonna have more use of the sewer. And if the marinas have another way of disposing of their problem, should we add that problem to our problem?
To our headaches.
Exactly.
I'd like to
Well-
see one of the ones for sale before they build new ones.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is
Can't
the,
remember towns for sale right now.
with the discharge, permit, that's, you know, through this Clean Water Act that's coming about. I think that's more of the pressing issue. The other thing is, I guess somewhat, you know, I guess fitting because it does deal with marinas, but it's not something that has to be understood and, right away. But I think the other matter is, Ms. Edinburgh, and I think as we're hearing, there are already some outside of the town that's hooked up, but we know likely it's gonna be in the town because, again, with the Clean Water Act approaching and this deadline by March of 2015, it's gonna have to be dealt with. And one of the things that can be done is the marinas just take on this cost of, you know, $80,000-$100,000, or the town looks at bringing them in, but I think we've already gone down that road. But your question with the holding tanks, I don't think that there's any need right away to put any type of decision on that, because it just could be too much for the town. Okay?
Well, I just wanted to mention that, when you clean, when a marina cleans boats, and they pressure wash the bottom of the boats and the bottom paint, and, the chemicals from the bottom paint that come off, I can only tell you that, I did, quite a bit of business in the state of California, in a lot of marinas with a coating that I was developing, and, they had a Clean Water Act, 15 years ago. And they couldn't put an ounce of water in the sewer. They had to collect it all, and they had to put it in holding tanks, and they had to pay the piper, whatever that was. But there was no way that anyone would ever consider putting the chemicals in the sewer. As a matter of fact, my coating was approved for wastewater systems in the state of California, but you couldn't power wash in California and put it in a sewer. So there must have been a reason for that.
Earthquakes.
And I think, California is, they are, you know, I
They're
know
number
today,
one.
they're only doing what are water-based paints, water-based soluble. They're not allowing any of these copper-based, but look, as to the whole.
Well, that's why they do it.
Well, my concern is, again, our plant is it's a biological plant, and as you know, there's little bugs. I mean, it's the microorganisms that in turn is what keeps this thing going, and we just gotta make certain that we're not offsetting the
Well, you'll
biology of the
Right,
plant.
you'll definitely
Bottom
change the
paints have
chemistry.
changed too, to be, but, I mean, we can't get the same bottom paint now that,
Right.
same way with our crab pots. We
Right.
can't get the same dip, even if it
Right.
costs twice as much. You just will put barn paint on it.
Right.
Because they've took all the chemicals out that actually kills the
Which is-
microorganisms
Exactly.
that we fight all
You're
year.
gonna regulate crab pots next year.
That was in there, but they still have, I mean, there's a lot of paints, I mean,
Right.
some of your paints have as high as almost a 50% copper,
Right.
content in the can, so I mean, it's there, I mean, the
Right.
position, and there's metal-free
So-
paints out there today too.
So you could put in a holding tank, and then the town of Rock Hall doesn't have to deal with any of the chemical attributes that are coming from these businesses, really.
Well, I think
Because it's not
we
like
already
regular
know there's
wastewater.
We already know there's a couple that are hooking into it, to the town system.
Who?
Pardon?
Ooh,
Johnny, Sue's asking who, or
Gratitude has done it, I believe.
in the town.
they're travelers
Yeah. Gratitude.
without
I
using a
think.
holding tank,
Excuse me?
without using a holding tank, drove directly into the sewer lines?
Yes.
That's holding tank or the runoff at the lift valves?
This is the lift wells. I mean, where they haul the boats up,
Right.
where they power wash the bottoms off of. You have to contain that water, and it's not a matter of who's gonna do it, they all have to do it.
But they're not using a holding tank, they're going
No,
directly
they're
from
gonna-
there.
No, they're having a settling pit where the solids settle to the bottom and the water
Then
runs
the water
off in
pumps
their
up.
sewer. And they're paying sewer charges for being able to do that.
But they're not doing it yet though, or they're.
How much
Well, I
leeway
don't
is there?
know that anybody's cleaned any bottoms off now, but I know I know Gratitude is in the process of designing and building their holding facility.
Right.
Lee Bear has called about it and said that he wanted to, know who to go to. I said, we don't design them, the state has to approve them.
But there's nobody in the town limits that's doing it at this time. We still have to, in the end, give some sort of, I guess, create some sort of guidelines to how we,
Yeah,
which is
but-
simple enough, as you say, we'll just put a meter on there. Right. But is there anybody outside of town that's on it, or?
Not to my
Round and round,
knowledge.
same.
So, no, okay, I thought you said there was travel lift runoff from out in the county.
Doug Edwards, which you know was at that meeting, he's
Right.
interested in doing it, and,
We're all gonna be doing it.
well, they have to do it.
They
They
have to,
don't
that's
want to
exactly right,
do
they've been doing it
It
for
has-
years elsewhere.
Hmm.
They've been doing it for years in other places,
Doing what?
having a
For
holding
what?
tank and pumping
Holding
up.
tanks.
Yeah, they, well, I mean, not in Maryland, in Maryland,
Pumping it out.
it just runs into the bed.
It's kinda like the old sewer.
Which is the problem.
All right, well, I guess the thing is, nobody's
You
hooked up
don't
at
mind
this
the
time,
bed,
right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, right.
How much leeway is there with the actual wastewater plant, as far as like, do you have like a block of leeway, like the size of the town, say if one or two marinas, somebody decides to dump their old gasoline down the thing, or their old MEK, or acetone, or whatever the case may be? I mean, do you have that much leeway with your
They
water
can-
system, sewer system
We
to
can-
overcome
That's
that?
right anywhere in the
They
world.
can do that today.
I know, but I mean, how much leeway do you have with,
Well, we have a certain amount,
I don't know how it works, I mean,
we have a certain range that our sewage has to fall in after it's treated. The outfall water has to be within a certain, so many fecal count, and, we have to, it's tested on a daily basis, so
Every day.
if it happens, we'll see it within a day when our samples come back. And we're not having any problems with
I
that.
you
guess
can't
is
ever
There are
actually
limits,
shut it down.
no, there are limits.
You can't shut
As far
it
as
down
what
if
you
it
can
gets
discharge.
contaminated, can you?
Do I?
You can't shut it down if it gets contaminated, right?
No. Well, we can divert it to the pond if we were,
Oh,
if
the
we
old-
were,
Can you get hazmat to come in there, can you do something like
No,
that?
that doesn't cost a lot.
And you contaminate
I
the
think we all
soil.
need to worry about a meteor hitting us first.
if we had a problem with somebody dumped something terrible down the drain and it ended up showing up in our sewage treatment facility, we would divert to the pond and put it in the lagoon temporarily till we got the problem taken care of. That's one good thing that Rock Hall has that a lot of other places don't have access to. Every time if we have what the
Overflow.
weatherman says we'll have in the next 2 days, if we have 3 or 4 inches of rain,
Pump it over.
there'll be too much I come into our system and go through that treatment plant that we can't handle. So instead of discharging stuff that'll get us in trouble, we'll divert to the pond till the storm's over and the tides subside and the rain drains off, and then we'll go back and run it through the plant. That's a real safeguard that we have up there that a lot of places don't have.
A lot of places don't have, we're lucky to have that.
So I think to finish this conversation up, again, March 2015 isn't too far away. And if we're gonna in turn tell these marinas that this is something that they're gonna be, provided they can do, we need to have, I guess, some set of guidelines in place. If we're not gonna provide for it, we need to tell them, we need to at least begin to tell these folks we're not gonna do it. So I guess that's the thing that I'm gonna, like I say, finish up this topic is, and not tonight necessarily, obviously, but we're gonna have to, is this something the town is gonna allow to happen, or are we not gonna allow to happen?
Yes. Remediation and
So,
chemicals.
Any other questions on this? Well, it's definitely food for thought, and it's a thought that's gonna be coming up, again, quickly, because as Ronnie states, you've got one marina that's designing their lift well for this potential possibility to occur, which is to pump it in our sewer system. I don't wanna see these folks go through the money and then they get told, if the board decides they can't do it.
Well,
You still gotta have it pumped off no matter what.
But they have to they have to install these catch
No
basins
matter
or
what.
whatever regardless. The question is whether
That's not a problem.
it's flowing into a holding tank or it's gonna be allowed into the town
So
sewer.
I'm sure their designs are meant to do just that.
Well, they are and they aren't. I think if you're going to have some type of reclamation system, it may not be anything more than it needs to. It just goes into a pit and then a sump pump transfers it over. Although on the other hand, if that pit is designed to in turn allow the solids to settle out, and then what then is the clean water then goes into the sewer, they're basing their design on that type of process. So it can be.
But just on what you described, it would seem to me, I mean, if the town was gonna accept this waste, they have to understand, you have to think through what kind of pretreatment you might require. I mean, is that enough, just to let the water sit in a basin for a week and let
No.
stuff settle out and then let it flow into the town system? It seems to me it's almost an engineering question too. I mean,
It's
to allow this
biological.
kind of waste to come in, and you know it's got chemicals in it, somebody, I think, with the credentials needs to be able to make some determination about volume, assuming how, certain number of marinas are all tied in, things like that, you know?
So if I hear Chip right, maybe we should then look at getting a consultant to come in and just ensure that what we are putting into the plant is.
Dan, we'll get some effort in DNR to come in and get it straight.
Doesn't the DNR have
Well, that-
recommendations? Can't you
We-
get a recommend, why do you
yeah,
have to
we can't
call
be
an
the only
expert?
town that's looking into this.
Exactly.
Who's done the
They're
work
not.
already?
They've been doing it for.
Well, and that's, it's, again, it's Joe, it's new, at least to the state, this all coming in, so I don't know if there's other.
You know,
I know
This is
the
a marina problem.
Well, no, excuse me, the Marine Trades Association is, again, I don't, I think they, if it were that simple, they would support it, but I don't think that they're seeing, a lot of the towns getting aboard. I think it's a novel idea if it can work, but that's the whole thing. I don't know if there's enough towns out there, at least in the state, that we can fall back on to get that answer.
But
Why don't
we're
you
not,
call
Bobby,
California?
right, I was gonna say
Either
California,
end.
it's been done.
Well, and
So-
You can't regulate.
I can't
runoff
believe
on-
nobody
on the
has
ground
It's
contacted
alone.
me.
online, it's gonna be online.
It is on.
yeah, well, look, I mean, I think again, that's what we're looking at. If we're going to tell the marinas, or if we're gonna lead them to believe as there's being engineering plans, at least for gratitude, to go down this path, let's in turn ensure that this is acceptable before they go down this path. That's
Right.
all I'm
This is
Absolutely.
a hazmat to
Absolutely.
start
Well,
with.
but we were at a meeting, you and I, at the Public Works Building in Canton.
2011.
And Wayne Morris and them with all the people from MDE were there, and they talked about this whole thing. The answer has come back that it's not harmful to these plants. And, I mean, I think the decision has been made as far as everybody being confident or feeling confident that it's okay to take it.
I wouldn't be.
And that message was relayed to everybody, I thought.
Well,
There's no way.
I don't recall being at the meeting where the NDE officials were there, but I think that was one thing that we were leading out to, which was have them sign off. Now, what I did hear from the DNR was, it's at the discretion of your plant operator, and that kind of takes the onus off of the MDE. But I think that's where I go back into Chip's comment, which is, if we're gonna have an engineer or somebody give us some input, why can't that individual, or maybe we need to bring in another individual that says, you know what, you're not gonna tamper with your biologics of your plant. I mean, is that something that you guys would wanna see in place before we, I mean, I just don't wanna leave these marinas on and then to say, look, we're not gonna allow you to do it, because it's a cost. I mean,
That was, you just, that way we leave no questions, no stone unturned. They give us the okay, we're good.
all right,
Oh, we got that covered.
all right, yes.
If you wanna bring an expert in, to determine what the ramifications are on our water system, why don't all the
Sure.
marinas get together and, hire an engineer and have an official study done, and have a conclusion done, and then, present it to the town?
Well,
I don't think this is a town problem.
Right.
Well, again, it is, it's not necessarily a town problem, but the question is the town, again, going to be in turn working with these marinas to bring it in? And if we are, then we need to cover our bases. Now, if it's a bill that you're saying that you want to send to them, then that's something, we have to find
No,
out.
no, what I'm saying is, in order to answer the question that you just posed, maybe all of the marinas that would be taking
Well, I'd
advantage
rather
of.
have, though, somebody represent the town. I'd rather have it, I don't want to have the marinas come to me and say, well, this is what we come up with, because they're going to be obviously leaning towards putting something
Okay,
in payment. I'd
then-
rather have us
Billy-
hire somebody independent.
Okay,
that
well
they
then
can-
maybe the town will hire someone independently, after all the marinas agree to pay for that person.
Right.
Well, you
This is
gotta
a
hire
business
somebody-
plan.
You gotta first contact somebody to get an understanding as to what type of, fees you're looking at, but what is the scope of the request that you're expecting of that